Hello there. In this video we're going to explain to you how you can work with the simple ring that's available by default in Fluid Designer. So if you start the Fluid Designer application, what we want to do is to look for the rings folder, and we want the object all UK ring sizes, and if you just drag and drop that onto the workspace, what you get is a default ring, and it's set up at size H+, which is 15.09 millimeters. That's the internal diameter, and it's set up with a cross section of 1 millimeter by 5 millimeters. So it's 1 millimeter here and 5 millimeter depth. Now, if you click in the bevel object here, you can change the size of the ring to 1 millimeter by 2, 3, 4. 1 millimeter by 5, etc., etc. So that's where you can change the size of the ring. But before you'd even set the bevel object, the first thing to do really is to set the UK size. Now, before you actually remove this from view, you do need to delete the bevel object. So if we click there to delete the bevel object, so we do that before we hide it, and also switch off the selection option. The I is for viewing it, and the plus is to switch on the selection of it. So what you need to do then is decide on your ring size. Now I'm going to use 18.14, so that puts it in view, but I can't actually select it at the moment until I click on the arrow key here. Now I can select it. So view and select is what you need. Once you actually got your ring size, you can then set the bevel object again, and I'm going to set it back to 1 millimeter by 5 millimeters. Now that object, that ring, will in fact print as it stands, but if you wanted to make some modifications to it, then you can do. If I select view and view it from the top, what you'll notice is it's actually a very flat ring on both the inside and the outside. Now if you want to change that and have a more rounded appearance on the outside of the ring, what you need to do is first of all identify which bevel object you're using. Well, we're using number 1, cross section 1 millimeter by 5 millimeters. So if we scroll up here, look for that particular object. So it's this one here. This is the object that we're using. And you need to switch it on and switch on the selection of it so that you can actually choose it. So we're viewing it and selecting it. So if we click on the object itself, it's this object which is being wrapped around the ring. So that's the shape, the cross section that's being wrapped around the ring. Now if we want to change that, what we can do is, with it highlighted, if we press the tab key on the keyboard, you see we go into edit mode with that object. Now all the control points are highlighted at the moment, but if I just zoom in, I'm just going to select that control point there. Okay, and if I just move the arrow key, if I move it to the left, you can see what effect it's having on my ring. Yeah. So what we could do is we could move that point, that control point to the left as well, and that control point to the left, and you can see now the shape of my ring has changed. We've got a very flat surface on the inside, but we've got a more traditional shape to the ring on the outside. Now you can play around with this as much as you want. That doesn't look so good perhaps. Okay, so you can zoom in, and if you want to do it in fine detail, rather than jumping out in increments, what you can do is to switch off the snap, and there you can control it, you can move it much more smoothly. And if you use the proportional editing, I'm just scrolling the center mouse button to change the proportional editing, that will also smooth it all out. But you can see that I'm actually dragging the inside of the ring at that point, which is not something that you want to do. You want to keep the inside flat ideally, because that's going to be the inner diameter of your ring. So be careful with the proportional editing. Yeah, it's okay to do it perhaps there, but not so much on the inside. So you can play around with that and change the appearance, the cross section of the ring as much as you actually like, and when you're happy with it you can press the tab key to come out of edit mode. So that's one way in which you can change the appearance of the ring. If I do Control Z and undo all of those changes, that just takes me back to where I was. As well as doing Control Z on the keyboard, I could do edit and undo. Another way to change this is instead of changing the actual bevel object, in other words this cross section here, if I actually click on the ring itself and if I press tab key to go into edit mode, we've got control points around the outside of the ring, and if I select that control point at the top, for example, one of the things that I can change here is the radius, and I can do it slowly by just clicking on the end there. That is quite slow, but if I just hold down the left mouse button and drag the mouse to the right, you can see that I'm changing the appearance of that control point by changing the radius. And I can of course just type in an exact value, say 3. Now if we do that, what you notice is it's changing it in that direction, but it is also thickening it up in that direction. So our default thickness down here is 1 millimeter. Remember, it's 1 millimeter by 5 millimeters. If we change our thickness here to 3, if I just go to View and Top, and if I just measure with the interactive ruler here, you'll see that that is now 3 millimeters, or more or less 3 millimeters. So that radius there has increased the thickness here from 1 millimeter to 3. But it's also increased the width of the object as well. If we just measure it quite substantially, that's actually 13 millimeters now. But you can see that that's an alternative way of actually reshaping the ring. So we can change the bevel object, that's this object down here, highlight it first of all and then press the tab key to go into edit mode, tab key to come out of edit mode, or we can highlight the ring itself, press the tab key, and we can change the radius value of the ring. So that's just a few ways in which you can create a very simple plain ring which could be 3D printed, and once you've actually got the shape you want and you want to save the file to print, remember, always never go to File and Save, always go to File and export it as a wavefront object. And we always like to save it to the desktop, and you just could call it my ring, and you could say 18.14 millimeters. So that's just a file name that I could give it, and that will be an OBJ file which once run through NetFab could be sent to the printer. Okay, so that's a simple way of creating a simple ring. Thank you.